When Khitish Pandya pitched his brand to West Elm, he didn't have the only social enterprise in the room, but his fair trade textile company that's powered by artisans all across India won the shelf space. This is how you stand out when everyone is selling purpose.
So if you buy a, let's say, a cushion cover for $10, it takes us $10 to just manufacture it. We cannot sell for less than 12 or $13. Since the yarn was made by hand, it can only be hand woven. First time they might buy because it is helping a particular kind of community, but it has to also be functional. You have a very good story, but if the product doesn't work, if it stains the sofa, a customer is not going to buy again. We have ensured that they succeed with our products because of the story, because of the quality also.
This episode breaks down how he built purpose into his supply chain and messaging without making it the entire pitch. Stay tuned. Khitish, thank you so much for joining me today. Really glad to have you here on Purpose Room. So we're going to talk more about your business and a little bit more about your journey in the social enterprise space.
My name is Khitish Pandya. I have founded a company called Ecotasar Silk Private Limited. We are a social enterprise and we work a lot with wild silks, which is predominantly done by tribal communities in India. I have been in this business for the last 25 years.
Can you tell us about what led you here?
Well, it has been an interesting and unusual journey because I was I was a serial entrepreneur all my life. So earlier, I used to manufacture prefabricated shelters, and I met with an accident in the year 1998, and mine was a small, kind of a bootstrapped one man. I was the only person managing it. So everything went downhill and I went broke. And for a couple of years, I tried to make a living by doing some consulting work. But I'm not more a doer than a kind of a person who would, just advise. So I was, but I didn't have capital. So I was, trying to figure out what to do next. And I came in touch with this NGO who was struggling to build a market for one of the products of a community that they were supporting. So I looked at the whole thing and I told them, listen, guys, I can tell you what to make, how to make, how to design it, who would buy it, but who is going to do it? You guys are social kind of, your forte is to organize community in the village and that you're not a business people. So that is when the CEO of the NGO, he is also the founder. He told me, Khitish, would you like to do this? We are not interested in the, kind of setting up a for-profit. We just want to make sure that the output of the community gets disposed in on a sustainable manner so that this community will continue to earn a living from this activity. So it was like, God sent for me because I was anyway trying to rebuild my life.
So you started just consulting with the nonprofit, but then you ended up buying out their fabrication division. Is that right?
I actually set up the division there. Though I was not owning it that time, so they were investing, but everything was set up by me, excepting for the village part where the organizing of the community and training them and equipping them. Post that side, once that product came, I was responsible for either selling the product in the market and creating a market for it or converting it into textiles and selling it. So the product of the community was silk yarn.
I see. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you're working alongside an NGO essentially. So it sounds like you're doing mostly the business side of it, making sure that they're getting connected to buyers, and then they're managing the artisan relationships. I know working with a nonprofit and a business together, hand in hand, I'm sure can come with some challenges. Are there some things that you had to learn from them and that they had to learn from you on the business side?
You know, uh, uh, I don't know. I am sure you must be knowing this since you meet a lot of people in the social sector. There is a huge perception problem. Corporates think NGOs are, kind of inefficient and, bleeding hearts, etc. And NGOs think that all corporates are money grabbing, exploitative. I was working alongside people in the NGO. They were mostly engaging with the community. My role started after the product of the community came in my hands. So there operationally, I had complete, I didn't have to work with them because, it's like if you are working with a farmer, once the farmer's produce come to the market, my role starts after that. So, I am not engaging so much with the farmer or the people who are engaging with those farmer. And today, I would say I have much better understanding of the constraints with which my colleagues work in the NGO. And they too also think that there is a different side of business people.
Yeah, you're completely right, especially the perception of how businesses operate and how nonprofits operate. But, there are a lot of businesses who care. And I think that it doesn't have to be, a dichotomous situation. Thanks for sharing that. What's unique about working with artisans that people might not know about?
When we got introduced to West Elm, there were 19 other organizations who had got introduced. We were the only ones. I'm sorry, I'm succumbing to being proud and egotistical, but we were the only ones who made the grade. Because I always made sure that I had to make, West Elm's buying process easy. And it's very difficult. Let me tell you, the quality checkers who come to us are used to checking for industrial quality using industrial quality parameters. Now, a handmade fabric can never be uniform. If you make bread at home, every batch of bread, every piece of bread would be different in shape, size, and weight, irrespective of whether you have been making for the last 20 or 40 years. That's what handmade is all about. So the yarn is variable, the weaving is variable. The weaver in the morning is very fresh. So when he is making the fabric will be denser in the morning. And as he becomes, exhausted in the course of the day, the fabric will become less dense. A good industrial fabric is where you say that there are X number of threads per inch, and that doesn't vary because a machine can do it uniformly, right? It can go back and forth X number of times. But with a product like this, it is important that the customer knows it and customer appreciate it. And fortunately, because of the top management of West Elm was already, wanted to work with vendors like us. But then the cadre was not equipped to handle this kind of product. When a quality checker comes from West Elm, he would look at the fabric the way he looks at everybody else, right? You would be expect a uniform number of threads per inch, color has to be same, etc., etc. So we tried to communicate. We had the support of the top management. So a lot of times things would get referred back to New York office, and they would then say, okay, this is fine. But we also engaged with the inspector in a very proactive manner, tried to tell them why this is so, and gradually we have a relationship. And at the same time, a lot of people would then, even their normally things that they could do all right, but their mistakes they would try to pass it off as because of handmade, variation of handmade. We always made sure that that doesn't happen in our case. If we made a mistake, we would own up. There are instances we would just pull the fabric out and remake it, even if it used to mean additional cost for us, and the fabric that we left behind is not sellable in the local market because of the kind of design. But fine, we still have been able to make a relationship where we have ensured that they succeed with our products in the market because of the story, because of the quality also. See, you have a very good story, but if the product doesn't work, if it stains the sofa of the upholstery of the customer because the colors are not fast, customer is not going to buy again, right? Like first time they might buy because it is, made in a particular manner, helping a particular kind of community, but it has to also be functional. So, over a period of time, the original community with which the NGO was engaged, they are basically first generation artisans. So these are women who had nothing to do with yarn making. Pradhan, the NGO, actually organized them, taught them yarn making because this was an activity which they thought could be economically sustainable in the environment in which they were living. These are villages which are very remote, and people had to work on their own and part time because they have other farming and other activities to take care of. Originally, yarn is made by the weavers' wives, family members, generally. But in this case, we were working, training a separate cadre of women who had nothing to do with yarn making as part of their life. Post the material comes, their production comes in. I then engage with regular traditional artisans, the people who do handloom weaving. So on one side, the raw material comes from a community which is newly inducted into the activity. On another side, I'm working with very traditional generational artisans. And to be very honest, handmade fabric is obsolete technology. Basically, this loom got mechanized. So if a person can make 5 meters a day, a mechanized loom can make the same fabric 18 to 20 meters. And today you have looms which can make 200 meters. So it's all about efficiency. The world has, it's like you and I trying to run a horse cart transportation business in today's world, obviously, won't survive. But unfortunately, in our country, we have a very large pool of people dependent on handloom weaving.
It's a very old tradition, something that's kind of passed down through generations, but a lot of people are still using it in the rural areas in India.
A lot of people are migrating out of their family vocation. It can only support a small number of producers. You cannot make mainstream products and still be, sustainable. So younger generations are gradually taking up other vocations and migrating out. But still, we have a lot of people who still do handloom weaving, and there is a market in India. So in my case, the challenge was not only to make the product of the women in the villages acceptable and profitably sold in the market. It was to convert into textiles. Since the yarn was made by hand, obviously it can only be hand woven because it's fragile yarn. So then I had to develop a model where hand woven fabric, which has its cost disadvantages vis-a-vis machine made, still make it work. So instead of trying to do something which is very mundane and commoditized, we do a lot of design intervention, etc., customization in our production to make our business commercially sustainable. At the same time, making sure that the processes that we use and the people we buy engage in our supply chain are remunerated in a fair manner.
Yeah, of course. It sounds like for customers who are buying the silk that's hand woven and the textiles that are hand woven, that's a conscious decision because you're probably buying in smaller quantities than what you could if it was made by machines. But it's also more of a respect for the craft, I would imagine.
Right, yeah. So in our supply chain, we have the material passing through a lot of people who work from home. And we have done time and motion. We do a time and motion study from time to time to understand how we can have a remunerative wage for the people in our supply chain. So I'll to give you an example, and this is to the credit of an organization called Nest, which is there in the US. They see most compliance audits of big brands end at the gate of the factory. Nest is an organization which is trying to create a standard for home-based workers and to see that they are not exploited and they get, though they are not based inside the factory, but they also get a fair wage. We are one of the first ones to join that partner with Nest, and we taught us to do a time and motion study of the processes. And it was very surprising. I have been in this business for quite some time, and it was not that it was not visible to us. We realized that almost 30 to 40% of the total time spent on weaving is actually bobbin making. So what we did was we factored that in the price that we pay to the weaver. When we documented did a time and motion study, we realized that a significant portion of the production is actually the contribution of the woman in the family, and so we actually added that to the total time and then increase the per meter wage that we used to pay to the weaver. If other people are paying, let's say, a dollar for a meter of fabric, we have made our wages for weaving to, let's say, $1.32 or, depending on unfortunately, right now we are not paying the woman separately because a lot of our viewers actually also get it done from women relatives in the neighborhood. Since we have access to our viewers' homes and our people keep going there to check the quality, and it's like we have a very healthy kind of a family relationship. So we have communicated to them that we are paying your husband extra for your work, which kind of gives them some kind of leverage. But ideally, we should be paying them separately. But because of the way it is structured, hopefully sometime in the future we might be able to do it. But right now we are not able to do it. It's work in
I
progress.
see. Yeah, and thanks for being so transparent with that. I think that says a lot about the type of business that you're running, how open you are about, this is where we are and this is where we want to be. Did Nest play a big factor in helping you to identify how you should set your wages? What was that like for you to make sure that you're being ethically compliant?
Since this business was incubated in an NGO, so our agenda was the people, right? The people in the supply chain and not, profit. So anyway, our processes were more or less, yeah, I made sure that everything was commercially sustainable. But at the same time, it was, with a lot of empathy and people-centric strategies were there, which continues even to this date, though we are a completely for-profit company now. And but that is that, kind of culture and thinking is our DNA now. Only thing is this understanding. We used to see, it's not that it was not visible. We used to go to the weaver's place and we would see his wife making the bobbins, but it never registered in our minds. And when we did this time and motion study and took every bit of the process into account, then we realized, oh, this woman is almost contributing 30 to 40% of the total time spent on the weaving. I thank Nest for that. It's a big step. There are a lot of weavers, a lot of women engaged in the activity. So to that extent, yes. And plus, they have from time to time they give us some support, like design development advice and business advice, etc. And that's the kind of engagement we have with them.
Yeah, I see. So, what exactly would it take for you to reach that milestone of being able to pay the women separately? What does
There
that
are
look like for you guys?
there are two issues here. One is practical, and second is cultural. Let me address the practical one first. See, if I insist on paying the woman separately, tomorrow when the fabric comes and there is a defect, he will lay the blame on the yarn supplied by the person. It may be his wife, it may be somebody else. So he will say, you insisted that, to get the yarn made from XYZ and they did not make the yarn. So this is a tendency we have seen. If we give yarn to a weaver and tell him to go and get it dyed in a particular place, invariably, if there is a problem, he'll lay the blame on that dyer and not on himself. So that is a practical yeah. Second is we are evolving as a society. And we have to take it one step at a time. I can ram it down their throat. It will create a lot of problems. Some people might agree, some people may not agree. Because of that, we have increased his wages. So I'm sure it has changed their internal dynamics. In an ideal world,
Yeah.
we should be paying separately, but I have to also balance, kind of. So that is why we are a social enterprise, not social completely and not enterprise completely.
Yeah, I understand. Having worked with an organization who has a little bit of a similar model, the cultural aspects, especially in rural communities, play a big part on, how people can transition to doing business. One of the villages that they were working in, some of the women and the wives, they were making orders on their own. And so it does really change the dynamic in the household in a positive way and can be empowered. So I think it's great that, even as a starting point before you can reach, the ideal situation that you've said that you're communicating to the families like, the women are contributing here and because of that you're making more because that does make a big impact in the household dynamics too. So I'm excited to see, how you guys get closer to that ideal situation. But I understand that it can take some time and some effort because of those contextual situations too. So shifting gears here a little bit, how are you communicating your impact? I know that you've had some notable collaborations, a longstanding partner of West Elm. What are the things that they're looking for to know that you're having an impact on the community?
Okay. So we don't do impact measurement like an NGO would do. Neither the brand looks at it that way. They have documented the process by which the product is getting made, which itself is quite, revealing about the kind of people engaged in the activity. So if Western continues to buy a fabric, it knows that the benefits are percolating down in the supply chain because that item cannot be made by machine. Once they choose a design which is handmade, it has to be made by handmade because we are using a hand spun yarn which cannot be used in a powered loom. So instead of getting into a very detailed tracking, is by just making sure that the designs are all using certain kind of yarn, you are ensuring that the a significant portion of the top line is gradually percolating down to a certain kind of producers in the supply chain. In fact, that we do it very consciously when we design something. I might make my designers only design using particular kind of yarns, which is what the community make. We also use a industrial yarn because we have to use in combination to create different kind of hand feels, etc. What I do is at the design stage, I make sure that we are using hand spun yarn, which means that automatically it will be woven on handlooms. So the final product, a significant portion of what we make will percolate down as wages, the small producers. In fact, that's my mission statement also. We say that our mission is to create large scale wage opportunities for small producers and artisans in our supply chain in a commercially and socially sustainable manner.
Yeah, I see. It sounds like they are more focused on the high level impact. So they want to know that everything is made handmade because they know that that's the work that's going to be given to the artisans.
Another thing that I do is at the end of the year, and it's not something which I, communicate to other people. It's just for me to stay on course with what I have set for myself. So what we do is how much have we paid as, how much handmade yarn we have used. Year in year, we do the tracking. So if the volume goes up, I know that more people, I have supported more people. How much fabric we have made on handlooms. We make sure that almost 90% of our production is on handlooms only. And then, if we have a choice of printing, we try to do designs on hand block printing, which is again manual process involving artisans. We rarely do digital printing. Then even if we have to do embroidery, we prefer to do hand embroidery, which is again manual. I have set a target for myself that at least 30% of what production cost should be wages going down to people like yarn makers, cocoon wearers, embroiderers, printers. We haven't reached there really, but we are between 25 to 30% on an average. Whereas if my competitor who is working purely with machine production, like, buying yarn from a mill and making fabric and making similar stuff, he's probably the footprint would be hardly 5 to 7% of the total production cost, wages component.
You've had this long-standing relationship with West Elm. Can you tell about how you secured that partnership?
West Elm at a certain level, at the management level, decided that they want to source some of what they offer to their customers from organizations like ours who are working directly with artisans, etc. And this was in the year 2008. This was a unique model. See, any brand would probably have a certain few items in their seasonal offering which is made by hand. You look at any brand. But it was a very conscious decision by West Elm to include a certain portion in their overall year on year, and through an organization which works directly with the artisans instead of buying it from the regular vendors. My business with West Elm is hardly 2 million US dollars. And my company is 3 million US dollars overall top line. So, but in spite of this small scale, we are still able to provide wage opportunity to almost 1954 people in our supply chain, which is stupendous. Somebody else probably doing 3 million would be not having even 50, 60 people in its production.
Right. But, in your context, especially with working with the artisans in the rural areas, that is something that goes a long way.
Yeah. And I think, here the credit goes to Western for their very conscious. I am yet to come across another organization. Let me be very frank with you. So a lot of people buy from us. We are, off and on, supplier of some items. Western has consistently developed a cadre of vendors of our type. And I'm seeing that trend, more and more companies are now waking up to that their buyers are becoming more conscious about environment, about the social impact of what they're buying. And so more and more companies have become, kind of now engaging with people like us. So, where Western started 14, 15 years back, people are now starting. So in that way, these guys are trailblazers.
Yeah, you guys are very well ahead of the curve, and it's just becoming trendy now. And I hope that it's a sentiment that stays. I know it's kind of popular to go green, to care about people on the planet, but I'm kind of optimistic. I think it's something that's going to continue.
I think it's not such a effort for people. All that you have to do is make a small change in the paradigm. See, if you always want the cheapest, you won't buy handmade. So if you change your buying behavior a little bit, certain items you might go for what is cheapest and best or whatever, but some items you should look at, the impact. And if a large number of people start looking at this, handmade as, willing to pay a little bit extra, it's not because we are, trying to make more money. That extra is to cover the inefficient cost structure that we have. Let me give you an example. If you buy, let's say, a cushion cover for $10, probably it takes us $10 to just manufacture it in the process in which we are manufacturing.
That's before overhead, marketing, shipping it, all of the added costs.
Everything else, even if everything else is same as a meal production, it's just that there is a dollar and 20, 30 cents difference just in the labor component, which then eventually might translate into $2 in the hands of the consumer. So there will be a 20% difference. Supposing you're buying a meal production might be, let's say, $10. We cannot sell for less than 12 or $13, which is a 20 to 30% difference in price.
Right. I think that's what a lot of people misunderstand, or they don't think further beyond than the price that's in front of them about what goes into it. The artistry, the tradition, the handmaking, the person that's behind it that's being paid an ethical wage. Whereas a lot of times that's not happening, especially in the textile industry. So there are so many factors that go into a higher cost. I interviewed a past guest who had a skincare company, and she was saying that she's not selling the skincare. She's not an eye cream. It's about the nature that's inside a bottle. It's about the preservation of the environment. I think that same principle applies here. That's not just the pillowcase that you gave the example of. It's about the protection of the people who are behind it and the craft and the artistry that's part of everything that goes into it.
Very true.
I'm curious, what about your upbringing do you think influenced where you are today in terms of your area of work? Could you pinpoint anything that kind of led you in this direction?
I have won the lottery as far as, having parents. So I belong to a business family, small business family. My dad and mom, my dad was hardly, he did not even complete high school. My mom also hardly 3 or 4 classes, but both of them were, taught themselves on their own. They were voracious readers and they passed it on to us. At home, in India, we are a society which has a lot of caste system where even within the Hindus, you have a lot of different classes of people. So you have Brahmins and you have other things, and there is a lot of discrimination. We were lucky that we had absolutely no understanding of what a caste is. At home, there was no discussion. I had Muslim friends, I had Christian friends, I had Sikh friends. Everybody had access to our homes. They would come. My mom will feed them. Everyone was equal. We were never told, don't go, and Orthodox Hindus sometimes may not want to go and eat in a different religion. I mean, it might come as a shock to some people, some of our audience, but it used to be, and at least 50 years back, it was more prevalent, not so much today. But I was lucky to be born in a household where we had very, cosmopolitan outlook. Human values were more important. And now looking back, I think I don't know whether it was done by them consciously or it was just the way they thought. And probably because they used to read such a lot that, they had a very big, very inclusive worldview. And I think when this opportunity came along with the NGO and when I started, doing it, I actually looked at it as just another assignment. I have to build a business. There are certain people who are making certain things. I have to make it work in the market. But while I started working with them, and credit goes to the founder of the NGO who actually roped me in, both of us used to come to the office very early. So both of us, we would take a break and we would stand out. And then he would start talking about, various aspects of the work that the NGO was doing. And, it influenced my thinking. Like, I could see, though I am doing something which is very commercial, you are just taking something and, making fabric and, selling it in the market. Even by doing this, you can impact the life of a lot of people. And it was a nice feeling. And, I think today for us, being profitable is something I don't compromise in. But not profit for profit's sake. We make less profit than what our contemporaries might make, because a lot of times it is about choices that we make. If I make handmade yarn, I might sell less quantity. Fine. I might sell more quantity if I use mainstream, material, because my prices will be lower and I will get better, bigger orders. But we let go of that opportunity. As long as whatever we are doing, we are still making a profit and able to make ends meet. I think our social outlook in the home was very different from, uh, you know, people around. And then I don't know whether Deep Joshi, who is the founder of that organization, Pradhan, whether he did it very consciously, indoctrinated me into the thinking, or it was just, freewheeling discussions that we had. But he was a big influence. And I'm, lucky that I got that opportunity to interact with him so closely.
So whether you were indoctrinated or if it's more of a continuation of your entire upbringing, you're happy to be in this space where you're giving back to people
Yeah.
and you're being profitable at the same time. Yeah, that's really beautiful. I think our parents and our environment have such an impact on our outlook on the world, and it sounds like that was a huge piece for you too.
That's right. Yeah. And like I said, I won the lottery when I was born in that family to my parents.
I love the way you put that. You won the lottery when you showed up on Earth. That's great. I'm curious about what has helped you guys stand out when you were able to secure that relationship with West Elm. So you were presented with a bunch of organizations, I'm sure, that had a similar mission, probably a similar concept. I remember you talking about this when we met the other week, but I think it'd be really great for our listeners to hear more about that too.
I have been a marketing person, salesperson. I have one credo. I say, I make money, I can be successful only if my customer is successful. If my customer can sell what I'm supplying, and if I can make his life hassle free, I will be in business, he will be in business. This has been my credo from whatever I had done in my life, this has been my credo. So there are a lot of problems, but we sorted that out and we did not go crying to our brands. We did not try to capitalize on their goodness of heart, kind of exploit that. I always look for a win and I'm happiest when there is a win-win for me and my customer and my suppliers and everybody. I'm happier if I am not winning, I'm not losing, but other people are winning. But I don't want anybody to lose in my relationship, like, whether it is with my vendors or with my employees or with my customers. And I think that attitude is across my organization. Most of my, people they would point out if something is wrong. They don't have hierarchy, doesn't matter, anything. And we have said that, customers, we have to make his life hassle free. If his life is hassle free, if he is making money, he might be selling less or more, but if he's making money from our product, we will always be in business. We'll always have a healthy relationship with our
Right.
customers.
They'll keep it back if as long as it's going well for them. And that's so important, especially, in the social enterprise space. It could be tempting to rely on the goodness of heart or to say, oh, well, this is our context, so please understand why this mistake happened. But, setting those expectations of, what's realistic in terms of the variability in the products, how you said that the thread count might change a little bit in the evening or in the afternoon, but setting those realistic expectations and then also just making sure that you're holding fast to the standards that you do have too. It sounds like those are the things that really helped you stand out compared to other NGOs that were also presented. Is there anything that you learned over the years that you think would be applicable to other ethical brands?
So, to both sides, to buyers, I would tell them that you have to set a different parameters of, buying parameters when you are trying to source handmade. If you use the same standards and parameters as you are using for mill made, the relationship will never work out. Your expectations will be never met and it will create unnecessary lot of heartburn. So understanding the dynamics of the production process and building your expectation around that so that you get a workable and good product. Don't compare it with a good product by the industrial production parameters. And then you should be able to communicate to the customer.
Yeah, that's a big
See,
piece too. What are the things that they kind of look for to communicate to the customer? Are you talking about in terms of how things are standardized, or maybe some variations in color or tightness of the fabric, or maybe they're looking for more of the storytelling aspect? I'm curious, what are your thoughts there?
See, there are a lot of brands are looking for stories. It is part of the marketing, kind of yeah. So everybody wants a story, and because that is how you can actually get a more value in the market. But very few brands are actually willing to understand and pay for the process. Lot of times, and it's not because they don't want to. At an individual level, everybody has a goodness in their heart. But commercial compulsions are there. So you're trying to bring a product, you want to sell more, and you want to communicate the story, but you want to then peg it with the industrially made competitors offering. So if my competitor is offering at, let's say, $40 a cushion, pillow cover, I want to bring it that level, and but I want to sell handmade. It's not possible, let's say, similar because the cost of buying is not similar. So to the buyers, I think they need to create an understanding of how the thing is made and what are normal variations and what are mistakes in the production process. And for us, it's important to, kind of, also communicate that to the buyer. Even
Yeah,
if there's
exactly.
something available at a cheaper price, sometimes because of the durability, the brand's reputation for durability or, etc., they're willing to pay more. So in our case, it is about whatever extra we are incurring by way of, using hand processes that the customer would be more than willing to pay, but we have to communicate that story. And so that is important for us. For me as a seller to the brand, it is important for me to communicate it. So they don't know my process. So if I tell them about my process, they will be then able to build their, whatever communication they have with their customers in the right manner. And I think people understand.
Yeah, and it's like you said, people are willing to pay more when they feel that the value is justified. Not everyone, but it's about finding those right people and communicating the story, the process, especially for the hand looming process. That's what gets the message across, and that's what gets the value across. So I hear you there. Switching gears, as we're coming to a close, Kitish, if you could share what you want to be remembered for.
I would be very happy if I can inspire some, youngsters that it is possible to do business where the very DNA of the business is to help people who are otherwise disadvantaged be profitable, but it's a very fulfilling life. If I can inspire a generation of, some people, I think I would rest in peace whenever.
I hear you. That's beautiful. If you can inspire somebody else, then you're like, that's the goal.
We have been growing as an organization. We are, we engage very actively with design students and trying to influence their thinking. We give a lot of internships to students because normally if you work in a corporate, you have a different kind of, exposure. And through those internships, we are trying to, kind of create some excitement that this is also a business model which is possible. We are now also started in a small way, started in incubating other entrepreneurs.
You're walking the walk and talking the talk. So my last question for you, Kitish, is are there any trends in social enterprise that you're excited for or looking forward to?
In fact, it is very exciting. Like I told you earlier, what West Elm did 15 years back, a lot of corporates are now trying to do it, which is exciting times for people like us who are in, having this kind of setup. There will be more acceptance. There will be more, business around, which means there will be more work for people with whom, the communities with whom we are engaged. And this is not because we are trying to sell the story. It is, I think, it is now because of the consumer pressure. So you have this ESG goals that corporates are, setting for themselves. Obviously, there earlier they would not have even we wouldn't have been there in the radar at all. Now, at least because of their own thinking has changed, we would be in the radar, which is great for us, for people, organizations like us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Kitish. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. Really enjoyed having you on this episode of the Purpose Room podcast. And I look forward to continuing to watch as you grow and as your business continues. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.